Good morning, Dolphins fans. Welcome to another episode of On the FinSide here with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL on Twitter, and Paul is fanatic_pick. That's fanatic with a PH. The Dolphins head into week 8 here against the LA Rams after a bye week. New quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa, and 3-point underdogs at Hard Rock Stadium as well. Not much on the injury report from either team. It looks like the Rams were at full strength and the Dolphins were too, with the exception of one player, and that's Paul's favorite player, Jamal Perry, who should be missing this game. We should see a lot more of Noah Igbenogany there. But Paul, the main story obviously in this game is Tua being promoted to the top spot at the quarterback position. We talked about it about a week and a half ago on our segment. Any feelings have changed about going from Ryan Fitzpatrick to Tua?
You mean to this relatively unknown, unheard of guy Tua that the fans haven't talked about a bit? Is that the Tua you're talking
That's
about?
that's the one I'm talking about.
Honestly, I'm good with it. I really am. It's you know, and I'm good with it on two fronts. First and foremost, we've got to see what we have in Tua for next year, if nothing else. I mean, we're in the thick of the playoff hunt. Hopefully, he can get us there. Hopefully, he can be everything we want him to be, and doesn't have the injury issues that are a concern, and legitimately so for a lot of people, including myself. I mean, I'm worried about the injury concerns. But, you look at the fact that the Falcons won Thursday night. I think you either sent it to me or tweeted it or whatever. As it stands right now, going into tomorrow, the Dolphins have the fourth overall pick in the draft. And then they have three more right now in the top 45. So it's you need to know A, if it looks like Tua is going to hold up, and B, if he's going to be everything we think he can be. I mean, I think he can be, but thinking he can be and seeing that he is are two very different things, and we need to see that above and beyond anything else, including playoffs this year.
Yeah, I'm certainly with you on that. And yeah, the Texans, if the season ended today, would be picking fourth in the NFL draft. And even though I think, I've said the same things about the Falcons and the Texans, I don't think either team with Matt Ryan and Deshaun Watson are bad enough to go, 2-14, 3-13. But the Texans are 1-6, and when they come back from the bye week, I mean, they've got a little bit of an easier schedule, but still, I mean, if they go 5-11, the Dolphins are probably going to be picking with that pick between 6 and 8 in the NFL draft. So that is going to be a high pick. And you've got to think also that 2 or 3 of those top 8 picks are going to be quarterbacks. So that's going to shove some value down to where you can look at maybe a Penny Sewell, a Jamar Chase, a Micah Parsons, somebody that's going to immediately get into your lineup. And to your point on that, you've got to know what you have with Tua. And I will die on this hill that there is no better time to put in Tua than this week. Okay. And here's why. Let's just look at the next 2 games against the Rams and the Cardinals. They're very difficult games, but say in one scenario you go 3-5 and you lose both games with Fitzpatrick starting. Are you going to put Tua in then and say, hey, rookie, go in there and save our season? I don't think that's a good time to do it. If you split the next 2 games and you're 4-4 with Fitzpatrick, I'd be thinking, okay, well, why didn't you do this 3 weeks ago when you had a bye week and you were 500 still? And then the third scenario, if you say you went 5-3 with Fitzpatrick, I still think you're gonna hit the ceiling at 10-6, get a wild card, get blown out in the first round of the playoffs, possibly with Fitzpatrick at quarterback. So there was no good time to put into it, and no better time to put him in than here this week.
And I'm going to agree with you on that front too, because in all honesty, I think Tua matches up a little bit better with the Rams with his play style. It's probably the Rams' strongest position in the passing game is at corner, even though I think we match up well there. But using guys like Jakeem Grant on quick crossers. A, it helps neutralize the speed rush of Aaron Donald. B, it starts taking advantage of some of the holes in their defense. Utilizing all of your receivers, not just throwing jumpers up to your tall guys. I love Fitzpatrick; he does it well, but his play style is throw jumpers up to your tall guys.
Yeah. And it's been effective too. That way of doing it has been effective. And one thing I hope that Tua takes from sitting next to Ryan Fitzpatrick every game, I hope he brings a little bit more of that than he did at Alabama. Fitzpatrick or Tua, to his playing style, is more likely to go through his progressions. He's more likely to try to hit the open receiver as opposed to finding the one-on-one and bombs away. But I hope he does a little bit more bombs away, because that's with Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, and Preston Williams. That's where the strengths on this offense are. So I do hope he brings a little bit more of that.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we see him utilize the running backs in the passing game a little bit more than what we saw from Fitzpatrick, because again, it's Fitz was very much a where my tall guys at type of player, and we need somebody that can make those special throws. We completely completely do, and Tua is the guy that can make those special throws, and the fact that he's going to go through some of his progressions can only benefit all of the receivers on this team, including Myles Gaskin coming out of the backfield, or Patrick Laird. We saw him last game. His two passes went to Laird and Jakeem Grant. Which tell me a series where the two, the running back and Jakeem were consecutive targets all year long.
Yeah. I think it's important to use running backs as that check down option, because especially when Tua is under pressure. I'm tired of seeing those two passes now. I've seen them 96 times over the last 2 weeks. But I can't wait to see Tua get on the field. Something else that's been talked about here, Paul, over the last couple of weeks is this back and forth with the analytics and how the offensive line is playing, and how well they're going to put Tua in. You have somebody who said, I think it was Marcus Spears on ESPN, who's like, something along the lines of, you're going to get Tua killed. There's no way I would put him in this game against Aaron Donald. And then that's supplemented by a lot of the analytics folk thinking, yeah, even though the Dolphins have let up just 10 sacks on the year, they haven't graded out very well. What's your take on that heading into this game?
I think my take on that is the same as my take on Omar Kelly's Xavien Howard story,
Which we'll get to, yeah.
It's lazy journalism at that point. I can pull up stats on any team and tell you something that's absolute crap without looking at the product on the field. And this offensive line has played well, and I think we tend to inflate it as Dolphins fans at times, because we see the promise and we see the ability there and the development in the three rookies that have played this year. In a line that did not play together at all. Not one person on this line played with one single other person on this line last season. The line is all new and they're still gelling together, but they're doing a great job. I mean, it's almost humorous. On a week, I think I gave Solomon Kinley player of the game. PFF graded him out as crap, and it was. You watch his tape, he was burying people, coming off one block to the next, and yeah, his guy made the tackle, but it was the third guy he hit on the play. So it's if you're going to be a national journalist, you don't have the time to watch every single game in depth, but don't make those lazy ass journalistic things. And trust me, I love Dan Orlovsky. He's a former UConn quarterback that I watched for years. But at the same time, it was lazy on his part, and then Mina just piled on top of it.
Yeah, and the guys over at 3 yards per carry, the Dolphins podcast, we used to have Chris Kaufman on the show, but they went back and forth with them on Twitter, and kudos to them over there, because one question that I think it was Alf on there asked is about Austin Jackson, how does he play 3 games? He lets up no sacks and 1 pressure, and he's graded as one of the worst tackles in the league. And I think there is something to that. I mean, it doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. So I do think, and we were talking about this last year at the end of the year, is that, yeah, I think Fitzpatrick does make the pass protection look better because he gets out of dodge so quickly. That there is something to that. I get it. And that's something I think Dolphins fans have to be a little bit prepared for, that Tua is going to stay in the pocket a little bit longer. He's going to hold the ball a little bit longer because he's young, he's a rookie, and he's not Fitzpatrick. So that's something I think people have to keep an eye out for. But even when Fitzpatrick has dropped back and held the ball in the pocket for longer than 3 seconds, I don't see this consistency of people getting into the backfield from the opposing team. I think Steve Marshall, Dolphins offensive line coach, has done an incredible job with these youngsters.
He really has. And to be fair, I think Chris Greer did a fantastic job with these guys too. I mean, he got a quality starting right tackle in the second round. He traded up in a move that had everybody shaking their heads to get Solomon Kinley, who I had a great conversation about with Jamie Nails this week, the last great number 66 we had. And he set up a line to protect Tua and to be a big mauling bunch of meat monsters up in front of the running game, up in front of the passing game, but to keep our quarterback upright, because that's something we've had a problem with for 2 decades.
Yeah, you bet. And it's a huge week for Robert Hunt too. It's a huge couple of weeks because he has started at right tackle. He's done a very good job from what we've seen. And now you've got a left-handed quarterback in Tua, and you're going to have Solomon Kinley, and you're going to have Robert Hunt protecting his blind side. Big couple of weeks for these two gentlemen. So, because the big thing is, I mean, if Robert Hunt answers the call at right tackle, I mean, they'd have to be and Austin Jackson, assuming that he's going to come back in a couple of weeks, you think they'd have to be stupid to reinsert Jesse Davis in the starting lineup again. They'd have to go with those 3 rookies.
I am going to take a different tact on that than you are. I do think that they'd have to go with the 3 rookies, but at that point in time, I'd be hard pressed, and this is no insult to Ted Karras, but they worked Jesse Davis at center in training camp. I can't even call it preseason this year. And I'd be very curious to see how somebody who is a team captain, and I never thought I'd be saying this about Jesse Davis, but has the respect of every other offensive lineman on the team, I'd be hard pressed not to at least flirt with the idea of letting Jesse Davis challenge Ted Karras to maybe be able to unseat him for that center position. We only have Ted Karras through this year. We have Jesse Davis signed to an extension for 3 years. And if Jesse Davis can be anything at center and can come in and make the plays at center, and suddenly we've got our line set for the next 2 seasons. If we make no changes, no contract, anything, no nothing, we have our offensive line and our starting offensive line set and dominating. And I know a lot of folks in our chat are mentioning Creed Humphrey. We'll get to him, I swear, but we're not there yet when we're in the thick of a division race. Although I know we've talked about a few draft targets.
Yeah, I would be. I would be shocked if Jesse Davis were starting at center over Ted Karras. I think Ted Karras has played at least has done a very solid job. I wouldn't see the need or the reason to insert Jesse Davis into the starting lineup at center where he's never played before. I know he got looks in camp and he's taken some snaps there, but that's where I think that's the value I think Jesse Davis would bring in that situation is he can play all 5 offensive line spots. He's the first off the bench in any scenario. Jesse Davis is going to be the one who's not here in 3 years. I think Robert Hunt, Solomon Kinley, and Austin Jackson still will be.
Yeah, my thought more so is letting Jesse Davis challenge for it to try to still retain a starting spot. And if he beats him out, great. If it's even, I give it to Davis. Only if Ted Karras is beating him out still at that point do I leave it with Ted Karras, and only because Karras is only here for another season or for this
Yeah.
season.
Yeah, I mean, based on the way he's played so far, I'd actually like him back. He's probably not going to be very expensive on that, and you'd have to re-sign Ted Karras first before you got to the draft and started looking at centers like Creed Humphrey. So we could talk about that throughout the offseason when it comes to the big guy from Oklahoma. Um, Also, too, Paul, November 3rd is going to be the trade deadline. We had a what more could you, I swear when I heard that erroneous report uh, from the Sun Sentinel about Xavien Howard being on the trade block, and I love that the Dolphins came out and squashed it immediately. I was losing my stuff when I heard that initially, and I was praying it was not true. I thought if you have the audacity to trade Xavien Howard, when you've seen what a matchup nightmare it is for opposing offenses to go against those two cornerbacks and Xavien Howard and Byron Jones for anything less than 2 first-round picks, I'm gonna flip this table over.
And the good thing I don't think he goes anywhere for anything less than for 2 first-round picks. It's my dad texted me around the same time I saw the tweet from you, and I was shaking my head already at both of you. No offense, because I looked at who the information came from, and then I called my dad back. I didn't call you.
Oh, good.
It's yeah, big hearts, but it is what it is. Um, and the first thing I said to my dad was, "Dad, this is a crock." And he goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "For one, you have to look at the source of the story. And for two, it's what this smells like." And I told him I could be wrong, but what this smells like is the Dolphins probably got a couple of offers for X. Every team right now is getting a couple of feelers and offers and little pokes to see if you can shake a player loose for something that's kind of a steal or start a conversation. This smells like the Dolphins got an offer or two, or maybe a feeler or two, and then somebody picked up the phone and said, "Hey, Omar, we got an offer or two for X." And Omar went, "Ooh, ooh." They're trading him. They want to trade him. They're dangling him in front of people. And everybody lost their goddamn mind. And that's all it smelled like.
Yeah, I am glad it was. I'm glad it was BS because here's the other part of it is uh, when rumors started coming out last year about the Dolphins are listening to offers from Laramie Tunsil, I thought there's no way. That's he is not going to get traded. Well, he was. Micah Fitzpatrick after the first couple of weeks of the season, there were rumors about him being traded. That was a little bit less shocking, but he was traded as well. So I another lesson to be learned from this too is that when the Dolphins are indeed not looking to trade somebody, they will come out and squash that report. So if we hear rumblings, and a lot of them, well, not a lot of them, but from one newspaper,
One writer
then
at one newspaper.
yeah, it was talked about as well from several from that newspaper. Joe Shad was talking about it as well. Um, then there might be something to any the Dolphins not coming out and squashing uh, a trade rumor in the future. It could be true unless they come out and squash that because that's what they did here in this scenario. So
Well, and two things actually I want to add to that real quick before we move on is, for one, the Dolphins could trade X. They could trade any player. Any player out there can be had, for the most part, for the right overkill offer. And I don't think the Dolphins were looking to trade Tunsil when they traded him. But they basically just kept looking at the Texans going, no. And the Texans came back and said, well, wait, there's more. And, they went all Billy Mays Hayes trying to sell the Dolphins on a pick. And eventually, Bill O'Brien and his excellent head coach and GM uh, way was like, we'll give you 2 firsts and a second, and all right, yeah, we'll take Stills. And the Dolphins just went, well, okay. And it was a trade package that Laramie Tunsil said, well, hell, I would have traded me too for that. And so if somebody comes in with an elephant gun offer because they just have to have this guy that they love so goddamn much, then you have to consider it, especially given the fact that we've got Needham and Igbenogany, who are not Xavien Howard. But if you get another 2 firsts and you've got 3 first rounders next year, 2 first rounders the following year, and maybe a second thrown in on top of it, I'd have to flirt with it and consider it. And for 2, not only, I mean, it's you mentioned Joe Shad, but not only was Omar called out by the Dolphins, he was called out by his fellow beat writers. And then the Dolphins' next media sessions, Omar's nowhere to be found.
Could have gotten in trouble there. Well, I would say we'll keep an eye on it, but I really don't care enough to keep an eye on it. But good information there, Paul. Yeah, the minimum I would ever take for Howard is 2 first rounders, and here's why is. And I wouldn't even do that. And I'll tell you why. Xavien Howard's 27 years old. If there is a chance that for the next 3 years, you've got Byron Jones and Xavien Howard at cornerback playing at this level, you take it. And the reason for that is because you look around the league, cornerback is the hardest position other than quarterback in the NFL to play. They make rules much more difficult year in and year out for these guys. And to have 2 guys that can play at that level is something special. Not to mention that, say Howard plays at this level for this year and then 2 years after, you could still have Noah Igbenogany come in 2023 and 2024 when he's only 23 or 24 years old in the back 2 years of his contract. So I hope they keep these cornerbacks together for a very, very long time. And they're going to be facing very good competition here this weekend because they're going up against Robert Woods and against Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, no, it's the Rams do have a viable passing attack, but again, I think X and Byron are going to have a field day against those 2 guys. I worry more about
Field day.
Yeah, they'll do all right. It's if we can get a pass rush going. I mean, you look at one of the things we've talked about a lot here is the Dolphins pass rush and really any pass rush being a big part of what the secondary can and can't do. And when you look at the Rams right now and the way that the Dolphins have been blitzing the last couple of games, with great timing and rushing through some blitz lanes, the Rams leave big gaping lanes that would be susceptible to the same exact type of blitz the Dolphins are doing right now. So X and Byron don't have to keep these guys wrapped up as long as they normally would. If Miami continues to blitz like they have been the past few games, that will give this offensive line fits because you send Baker up the middle on a timed blitz, it is wide open every single play. Every single time Goff dropped back to pass in the last game I watched, that is ridiculously open and susceptible for them, especially if you got Grugier Hill and I'm blanking right
Landon
now.
Roberts.
Yeah, Landon Roberts doing the same thing from other areas. It's just ugly, and at which point you're gonna eventually make Goff make some really bad throws.
Yeah, I like how the Dolphins defense does match up with the Rams secondary, or excuse me, with the Rams offense. Yeah, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, I have a lot of respect for. They're not the biggest, they're not the fastest, but they're crafty. They get separation. One of the better 1-2 combos here in the league. Both actually have exactly 450 rushing and receiving yards each on the year. And I say rushing because no team in the NFL uses their wide receivers more on end arounds or more in motion than the Rams. I like how they do that, and it shocks me that more teams in the NFL don't do more of that because it keeps you so unpredictable from play to play. And I think that's also the case here with the Rams. Yeah, and to your point there, Paul, The Rams, given that they leave open some of those lanes there, the Dolphins are so unpredictable, like we've been talking about on their blitzes from week to week, that plays that really goes against what the Rams are trying to accomplish. And I'll go a step further. Jared Goff, look, he's done great this year. Quarterback rating of 102.4, completing 67.7% of his passes, 12 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. But this to me is one of the most, as far as just talent, one of the most overrated players in the game. And I hope I don't come back to regret those words. But what I mean by that is everything has to be aligned for Jared Goff. His feet have to be set. His throwing motion has to be perfect for him to be able to have a great game. And I don't see that happening here against the Dolphins.
Yeah, it's and the way the Rams offense is set up, it's like they manufacture extra time for Goff or attempt to, and that's with the number of reverses they run, the number of little screen passes they run. They're trying to keep the defense back on their heels, and you know that is something that if Miami can get to him early and often, is not going to allow that manufactured time to let Jared Goff get his feet set and get his little perfect motion ready to go. And I'm excited to see it. And hopefully we see some linebackers read that screen game well in this coming one, because Miami has the speed to close on those. And
Mm-hmm.
pretty things happen when a linebacker can close on a screen pass.
Yeah, you bet. And they've got a lot of ways that they can get you on offense, because I mean their running backs Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown combined have already 700 yards rushing exactly on the year. They're averaging 139 yards a game on the ground, which is 7th best in the NFL. So they can hurt you on the ground too, no doubt about that. But it's a huge game for the defense here too, because when you look at the 6 games the Dolphins have played, against the Patriots, they got run over. Game 2 against the Bills, they let up 31 points. Josh Allen had a field day. And then when they faced Russell Wilson, they got beat pretty handily as well. And then in the other 3 games, though, when the Dolphins won against the Jaguars, against the 49ers, and against the Jets, they played dominant football. So you've got, if the Rams put up 30 points and the Dolphins lose, again, I'm going to look at this defense and say, okay, every time you've played somebody, you've got your asses kicked.
Yeah, and what I'll say to that though too is the Rams offense has really taken off against some pretty bad defenses thus far overall. So it's a little 50 cents of one and $0.50 the other, or whatever the hell the damn saying is there. The other interesting thing too, and this is something I don't think we even touched on after last game, but it's a stat that I saw. We touched briefly on what it was prior to last game. Bobby McCain in deep center field is now allowing a passer rating to his area of 0.0 on the season here in game 7. That could be huge, helping out over the top, because you've basically taken away a third of the field from Jared Goff. And if you've done that, you're really limiting him down on what he can do. I know the Rams aren't a deep passing team, but if Miami can get a lead, if Tua can hit those crossers and really roast that defense so that they can open up the running game, the Rams defense is difficult to run against. But if Miami can get a lead in this one, and the Rams aren't able to utilize their running game as much, and they aren't able to really keep everything in that front third of the field, and they've got to start taking some shots, that's when Miami's going to eat them alive, both as far as the blitz goes, like we talked about, as far as the secondary goes, and really just be able to pin their ears back and start pasting Jared Goff, and then this game goes just completely out of hand and goes a fun direction.
Yeah, Bobby McCain again has proved me wrong this year at free safety, and to your point, yeah, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, very good tandem, but they're not guys who are gonna burn you over the top unless unless there's a coverage breakdown. They're 4.640 type football players. So
Hmm.
because of that, now you could take Bobby McCain and you can move him a little bit further down so that he can impact the slot and impact the middle of the field. So that's going to be big for this matchup here too. And yeah, Darrell Henderson, 412 yards rushing this year, almost 5 yards a carry. So if you can get a lead on them on the Rams, then they go away from that running game. But also, man, the Dolphins get off to a 14-0 lead with Tua. Man, how excited the Miami Dolphins community is going to be. So we're looking for a big first game here out of Tua. But also too, we did a segment with Isaac Bruce, the Rams Hall of Fame receiver, 2020 inductee, and one thing that intrigued me too was that, and I was going to ask him this question, and he beat me to the punch, was that um, the Rams played on Monday night against the Bears in a pretty physical football game. And then they've got to fly from LA to Miami to play this game at noon on Sunday. So they've only got 5.5 days between games, and they've got to fly across the country. And I was going to ask Isaac Bruce about that. It's like, is that really a big deal? Or do, fans make too much of a big deal? And he had said that, something I really hope the league does is stop doing that because you don't have enough time between those two games. And I think that might be the case here.
It might, and I think Isaac Bruce went so far in your interview with him to say he was petitioning the league to do
He did.
exactly that. And it's that does have an effect. And the other thing that has an effect, and I know I was going to bring this up, and Raging Dolphins Maniac brought it up in our chat, so I'll bring it up now, is one of the last times that you saw the Rams get truly shut down, stymied, etc., was when a certain defense completely destroyed their juggernaut of an offense. And that defense was coordinated by a certain defensive coordinator named Brian Flores that you may have heard of. And so I think, given that fact, and given what Miami has on D, Flores, it's the same offense at this point. Flores knows this offense. Flores has shut down this offense, and really, with an extra wrinkle or two, he can do that again.
Yeah, and I would argue too that at least on paper, just on paper, the Dolphins defense is very comparable to the 2018 Super Bowl team for the Patriots. I'm not saying that they did what they did, but in terms of talent and how he can match it up, absolutely very comparable. And like you said, that's a great observation. Brian Flores has beat relatively the same team in the Super Bowl, held them to 3 points. I mean, yeah, they don't have Todd Gurley anymore, but I don't think that's a big switch going from Todd Gurley to Darrell Henderson. In fact, I'd argue at this point, Darrell Henderson's probably better from what I've seen from Todd Gurley, other than him failing to stop short of the end zone. So, Paul, and I can't emphasize how big of a game this is, and here's why: because if the Dolphins win this game and they go to 4-3, they've won 3 games in a row, obviously. Then you go and play at Arizona the following week. That's going to be a hard game to win. But if the Cardinals can be beat. They lost to the Lions a few weeks ago. It's a game you could possibly win. But if they go 4-3, I'm going to be staring at that Arizona game thinking, man, if you can get to 5-3, and then the 4 games after that are all against opponents who are 2-4 or worse, man, the season could get fun real quick.
I've got a gut feeling that this season's going to be fun one way or the other. I mean, this has turned, and that's one of my biggest things with a football team is I need my team to be fun to watch. It's and win or lose, I want it to be exciting. And Flores and Greer have built a team that win or lose, it's gonna be exciting, and they're gonna be putting their all into everything, and that gets fun to watch. Now, I think Miami could do some good things here. I mean, you look at the Patriots; they're stumbling and staggering right now. And then all reports have Steph Gilmore not only putting his house on the market, but his house being for sale has a deadline for all offers to be received 1 hour after the trade deadline. So the Pats are just borderline fire sailing at the moment. The Bills looked kind of real the first couple weeks and have looked like absolute pretenders the past few weeks. I mean, they almost got beat by the Jets. Um, and the Jets, well, we don't even need to talk about the Jets. The Jets aren't doing a goddamn thing this year. Hopefully they get a win or two, which I
Yeah,
never thought I'd say, but I don't.
let's go Jets.
Although I will say it's starting to sound like Trevor Lawrence may say, no, I might stay in, or has already come out this week and said, I might stay in school next year. Um,
I think he'll take the money. So, but
I
yeah,
think he'll take the money, but he might
I've
take
heard
an
that.
Eli type approach.
Yeah, I could see that happening. Because he's got a lot of pull there, and the Jets could be just so terrible at that point. Even
And
worse
they
than they are
might
now.
keep Gase.
No, they won't.
They legitimately might keep Gase.
It will never happen.
It's he's slippery and he has more excuses than he normally does right now. Unfortunately,
Then again, I'm surprised he hasn't been fired yet. So
yeah.
every week that goes by, it adds a little more credibility to what you're saying.
I hope they give him
I
a Gruden style contract, which I know isn't happening either.
Gosh, oh man, that would be the greatest thing ever. But
But I
yeah,
would
but
throw a party, socially distanced party.
gotcha. Patriots, yeah, I think Patriots are done. I mean, I hope I don't live to regret that. I mean, and I think they know they're done too. I mean, you're not. I mean, they're 2-4, and they're coming off a game where they just looked so terrible against the 49ers. They lost 33-6. Cam Newton throws for 98 yards and 3 picks. It's almost like Cam Newton came out and said after the first 2 games and was like, I told you I could play. I told you I wasn't done. That's it. And then they come back and they just get absolutely steamrolled. He gets COVID, and then he comes back from COVID and he gets steamrolled. Uh, yeah, you look at their wide receivers. Julian Edelman's going on injured reserve. You're going to have Demir Bird and Gunnar Olszewski. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing their names right as their top 2 guys. I mean, that game in Miami in December at home is starting to look like a pretty handy win there.
It is, and there's a lot of games on the schedule that are starting to look more and more like a pretty handy win, and it's exciting. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun doing this show down the stretch. I think we're gonna. I mean, we do anyway. We had fun when the Dolphins were. Well, the Dolphins were basically hot buttered ass. They weren't Jets level hot buttered ass, but they were pretty bad.
Well, if you look at us doing the show here, Paul, over the last, since I'll say this comfortably, since the beginning of 2017, this is the only time I actually am going into a game thinking we have a good team. I think we can beat most of the teams in the league. Um, and I haven't thought that other than maybe the first 3 or 4 games of 2018 when the Dolphins just started 3-0. But even then, they beat up on weak opponents. So I think legitimately that they can make a playoff run here. But to do that, going back to what I was saying, is it is imperative to me that you at least split the next 2 games. And these are going to be tough games to split. You got the Rams at home, and then you have a harder game at Arizona. If you go to 3-5, it's going to be tough to come back from that. But if you're 4-4, and then you look at those next 4 games against, you've got the Chargers and the Bengals at home, and the Jets and the Broncos on the road in no particular order. You got to think you got to go at least 3-1 in those 2 games or in those 4 games. Now you're 7-5 on the year. You set yourself up to be a 9 or 10 win football team. And that's being conservative about it, I think.
Yeah, and even if you don't split the next 2 games and you for some reason end up 3-5, I think you could very realistically go to 7-5 from that 3-5 based on the next 4 games.
Yeah, you would have to. You bet.
It's, I mean, and you're still set up to be a 9 or 10 win football team going into that home stretch in December, which looks awfully palatable at the moment. So yeah, it's. I think Miami has very realistic playoff chances here, and in all honesty, I don't see a team in the league that they can't beat. I'm not saying they will beat everyone. No, that's only happened once in NFL history. But I don't see anybody that scares the hell out of me. I really don't. I think this team can hang with anybody. To your point before,
Yeah, this in the AFC, you've got four really powerful teams: the Steelers, the Chiefs, the Titans, and the Ravens in no particular order. But they only play one of those teams, and that's the Chiefs at home. And going back to that is if the Dolphins go to 3-5, yeah, you're right. You've really got to win the next four games, and that could happen to get to 7-5. Because if you go to 3-5, and you got to think you're probably losing to the Chiefs. That's six losses. You'd pretty much have to run the table the rest of the way. So that's why these next two games are extremely important. I still think you really have to split these next two, and to that as well. Let's get to our bold predictions and our score predictions, and mine are going to kind of be one and the same. I'm predicting the Dolphins at the end of the fourth quarter are down 16-14 to the Rams. Tua puts together a 30-yard drive, gets the ball to the Rams 36, 37-yard line, sets Jason Sanders up for a game-winning kick, and he hits it, and the Dolphins come away 17-16 victors in this game.
I'm gonna go with two bold predictions: one on offense, one on defense. On offense, I think Jakeem Grant ends up with 7+ catches in this game, which would be huge for him, given his production thus far this year. On defense, I'm predicting a combination of stats. I think Miami gets 6 sacks in this game, including 2 by Van Ginkel, and 3 turnovers, including 2 interceptions.
Wow, that would be a heck of a defensive performance. And I like how the Dolphins do match up with the Rams here in this game, even though they are a talented offense. So what's your score prediction?
I think Miami takes this one, and I think they take it a little bigger than people think. I know we had Jamie Nails on. He predicted a 3-point win. I know we had Isaac Bruce on. He predicted a 3-point win by the Rams. And really, a lot of people are keeping it within 3 points on their predictions. I'm going to go 27-13 Dolphins.
What a major win that would be heading into
statement game, baby.
The card. Yeah, I mean, because then you go to Arizona, and oof, if you take that one down as well, it could turn into quite a season. And if you look at 2000 and 2008 and 2016, when the Dolphins did go on a run, they started going on a run at this time. So that needs to happen here, and we're going to be certain to break down that game on Sunday night about 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern on Sunday night. So be sure to join us as well. Also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is Fanatic _pick on Twitter. And if it's not on the right side